What are the prospects for peace talks, and why are many Ukrainians skeptical about them? Does Ukraine have technological parity with Russia on the battlefield? And how has Ukrainian civil society become one of the country's greatest assets during the war? You're listening to the Explaining Ukraine podcast, a show by UkraineWorld, an English-language multimedia project about Ukraine. I'm your host, Volodymyr Yermolenko, Ukrainian philosopher, editor-in-chief of UkraineWorld, and president of PEN Ukraine. My guest today is Volodymyr Havrylov, retired Major General of Ukraine's armed forces, former Deputy Defense Minister, and former Ukrainian Defense Attaché to the United States. Explain Ukraine is produced by UkraineWorld and brought to you by Internews Ukraine. This episode is created with support from Politeia, a Ukrainian NGO. Before we begin, a brief reminder: you can support our work on Patreon. Your contributions are essential as we depend heavily on crowdfunding. You can also support our volunteer missions to the frontline areas in Ukraine, where we deliver direct aid to civilians and defenders. Donations are welcome via PayPal. All relevant links can be found in the episode description. Now, let's begin. Volodymyr Havrylov, welcome to this podcast.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you very much for agreeing to talk. So you are a person who has a vast experience in both political topics, military topics, and technological topics. And I would like really to ask you about a lot of things that are connected with this war. First is, of course, the political context. Everybody in the international media talks about peace negotiations. When, for example, people in big international media ask me or other Ukrainians whether we believe in their success, most Ukrainians are skeptical about it. What is your opinion on this?
I don't believe in the desire of Moscow, the leadership, the Putin, to resolve this conflict on terms which are interested to us or Americans or Europeans. For him, it's a personal issue. He wants Ukraine disappear as a phenomenon from this map. And also he's dreaming about the restoring of a kind of empire like that. So for him, any kind of deal with the preservation of Ukraine as a country, as a nation, as a successful nation in future, as a part of the European Union, it's not only personal, but kind of historical disaster. That's why he will try until the end just to see any kind of solution to achieve his dream. And that's where we are. And the reality is that he lives in a virtual reality. He don't like bad news from the ground, which don't match his vision and his apprehension of this world. So that's where we are, and we have to keep it in mind, and we have to talk a lot about this with our partners, with administration of the United States, just to give them the real flavor of this war. So we are in the process.
If I tell you that Russians believe that they're winning this war, and therefore they don't really want any kind of deal right now, because they try to mask their unwillingness not to sign the deal now because Ukraine doesn't want to go away from the so-called Donbass. But if you look at the front line, the way how they make the offensive in the south, in the Zaporizhia region, in around Kharkiv, and etc., we understand that even if Ukraine goes away from Donbass, they will say, okay, but we continue on other territories. Do you agree with me that Russians believe that they're winning this war, therefore they don't see any sense of signing the deal?
When we say Russians, we have to divide them in several categories. There is a leadership, political leadership. There are military, and there is a population. They don't have a civil society. They have a population. So there is a lot of propaganda in this society, in this country, in Russia. And as I mentioned, the leadership, Putin personally, they believe that they are succeeding, because they see the world through the reports of the military, from first of all, and from some kind of other organizations inside the country. But the problem for them, the reports from the military are not true. most of the cases now in 2026, they were more or less relatively okay in 22, 23, but starting from 25, his military started to feed him with information he would like to hear, trying to hide some kind of unpleasant things on the ground. And the first sign of this was this very famous public report of his military to him about the situation in Kupiansk in December. They reported that Kupiansk is occupied by Russia, everything is fine, and they did it publicly. So the biggest lie from the military was on the. I think they expected to really achieve that kind of goal in near 2-3 weeks, but now there is a huge confusion. The city is not under control of Russians, and but they military they are continuing to keep him informed. Not in the realistic way, but is what he would like to see. But military themselves are divided in Russia in several categories. Those who are on the ground, they really understand that there is no military solution in this war. Those in the middle, on the high level, who are in the headquarters, they are preparing reports to the top. They're forced to lie more and more about the real situation on the ground. And so that cognitive dissonance between the situation on a tactical level and the vision of the world by leadership will create a lot of conflicts inside mental conflicts and a lot of cracks inside the civil society in Russia in next 2-3 months, because there will be no successes, operational successes of Russia in this war anymore. Because this war is a technological war now. It's not a traditional maneuver warfare. It's about robots, it's about unmanned systems, and we are in a balance now. So we are on the same technological capability as Russia. So for us, it's only a matter of resources, money, and components to sustain this war. It's not about the number of people now. So the Russians, they still continue to use people as a main force to achieve some successes on the ground. But every square meter in Ukraine provides a lot of losses to them. And that is a challenge they would like not to publicly recognize to the people. So we will see a lot of cognitive dissonance things in this year, because reality is different from what Russian leadership is expected. And the Russian population, they are following the propaganda inside the country. These brave reports from the leadership that everything is fine, and the last report of Chief of General Staff, Gerasimov, that we have 500 square kilometers only in January, which we took in Ukraine, but reality is different. Not this number, and the casualties are hidden. That's a challenge for Russia this year.
Let's talk about the technological aspect, because it's indeed very, very important. There are different views on who is winning the technological war, and basically on this podcast, I ask several experts in different, parts of expertise, and there is no kind of a one response. Some people are saying that Ukraine is lagging behind. Some people are saying that Ukraine is winning. Technologically. But most of the people say that Ukrainians are more advanced in innovations, in creating new ideas, but worse in scaling up. Russians are better in scaling up. So Russians, very often, they take a Ukrainian technology and they scale it up and make it massive. Will you agree with this?
First of all, we have to understand that it's not about the number of people, this war. It's about the technologies and creativity and scaling up, of course. So it's the first time in this war, Ukraine, we are in parity, we are in balance, because we can provide same capability for technological means, not by number of people or artillery or tanks or something, through unmanned systems. We are more creative, given the nature of our society. All innovations in Ukraine, they are coming from civil society. The military are end users. They just listening to what the clever hairs talking to them from IT companies, from defense companies. Military as a conservative society, they are not creative in the world. It's normal. They just using the equipment they are provided by the government. So they know how to use old-fashioned legacy equipment, but they're very slow in understanding the technological changes, and so that's why they are not very creative. They're very conservative. We have to accept it as a reality. But if you have a vibrant, dynamic society which is really supportive in this war, which is an energy of the war, and they can bring to the military new asymmetric solutions, hybrid solutions, how to conduct this war in a different way. So Ukraine is number one in this because we have very vibrant civil society with a lot of ideas, hundreds of companies. Today I visited one conference on defense issues. 2,300 defense industry companies in Ukraine, from small to medium one, contributing to new ideas. A lot of innovations, 5,000 different ideas which are now in work. At the same time, Russia, of course, Russia, they are not so fast in creativity because of the nature of their system, a centralized system. There are a lot of energy from the ground. They have research institutions, government things, which are working hard, of course, to match the tempo of innovations. But mostly they are using our ideas and trying to copy them and to scale up. And there's the area, the authoritarian regime as Russia they have. Any authoritarian regime is very good with scaling up. So they can concentrate resources and to produce something in mass, in numbers. So they are good with that. For us, it's maybe a challenge due to two reasons. We don't have huge factories like in Russia. And also the second issue is security issues. We are under permanent threats from the ballistic missiles and others. So we are not able to build a huge factory like Yelabuga in Russia with a huge territory and starting to produce something because it become a target and we have to do something with that. So it's the area we still have to think what's the best how in terms of scaling up. But the problem in technological war is not about numbers. It's about the effectiveness of the systems. It's about the permanent change of the design, just to follow the countermeasures and other things on the ground. It means that you don't need to produce something in huge numbers if in 2-3 months it's not relative on the ground because there are countermeasures. So you have to be more dynamic in terms of digesting all these ideas and produce as minimum numbers of this specific design to test it, to see how it works, but after that be ready to change it. That's the nature of the modern technological warfare. That's why for us maybe it's plus that we have a lot of ideas. For us, it's important to have the feedback from the military and the permanent improvement of these ideas. And maybe not to concentrate on the scaling up of specific design, but to encourage the competition among our companies for the best design. So that's the area we have an inevitable advantage with Russia. But nevertheless, there are some systems which are simple, which will not be changed in the next 6-9 months, but they are needed in numbers. Of course, in this case, we have to do something with competition with Russia in scaling up. The only way maybe is just to use our partners. Their manufacturing capability next to us in Poland or Czech Republic or some Romania, which can do this job with the European money but they have to produce Ukrainian designs, not their own, but designs which were approved by the battlefield, by military. That's the area. So in technology, there is no winning side. It's a competition. It's a permanent competition. And in this case, only more creative side and the more economically sustained side can prevail. So in the end of technological competition, only the side with a better economy will succeed. And that is the challenge for Russia, because their economy has limits. We are supported by European countries and other countries in terms of resources and access to the technology. That's why in technological warfare, Russia will lose inevitably.
But there are some obstacles to, let's say, Ukrainian technological win, right? Some people say that Ukraine is still too bureaucratic. Some people say that, as you said, we cannot scale up because we cannot just put a big factory on the ground. Some other people say, yeah, Europeans are supporting us, but the way how European economy, how EU economy goes into this more military or security direction is very, very slow. It's very, very slow. And Europeans themselves are not very fast to change some rules to make, their factories integrate with Ukrainian ones. What are the biggest challenges for you? What do you think as the biggest obstacle for Ukrainian military technological progress to go faster?
Of course, we have to improve our internal management, internal processes, especially in the Ministry of Defense. It's bureaucracy. A lot been done there in the last 3 years by several ministers, but nevertheless, there are still challenges. We need to change some legislation, to accelerate some internal procedures, and in many cases, it's about the people. So we have to have right people in the right positions. So we have to be very selective and straightforward thinking how to select people and point them to the positions, because it's about the motivation, it's about the competence, it's about the open mind, readiness to discuss and listen to others. So we have to use that civil society nature in Ukraine on the government level or the management level, where possible. That is an area which requires a lot of efforts yet. It's also related, of course, to the next step. It's things like how to address the scaling up things, because it's all management, it's all organization. It's about the decision making. So we have to do everything to give the people who are making decisions maximum flexibility and protection in this, not to waiting for them to make some mistake and then accuse them of doing this mistake. These people who are responsible for decisions, they should not be afraid of mistakes. Mistakes is also a very good thing sometimes, if it's not very dramatic. Mistakes is an area where you learn. And we have to be open to that. That's why it's also about these things that bureaucrats in Ukraine, they sometimes are scared of any kind of punishment for bad decisions. So many of them prefer not to do something and just to waiting for orders from above. All these features of the totalitarian, authoritarian regimes, we inherited many things from the previous history. So we have to work very hard to remove all these historical old-time obstacles and to encourage people to be more brave, more open, more flexible, to use this kind of advantage Ukraine inevitably has comparing with Russia.
What about this integration between European military production and Ukrainian? Is it going fast enough? What are the obstacles in that? You already mentioned this question of intellectual rights, right? That Ukraine wants that if there is a cooperation between Ukraine and neighboring states in European Union, that Ukrainian companies have intellectual rights, property rights on its production. What else?
There are some real challenges. It's about the rights on the products. we didn't pay a lot of attention to that in previous years. And because during the war, a lot of small enterprises, companies emerged, which decided to support our defense industry and support our military. And many of them, they moved to this area through enthusiasm of the owners and the private businessmen. They didn't think about the idea of property rights and what to do in case of something. So they didn't have people who could assist them with that. So only later, step by step, they started to understand that they are the keeper of a treasure. The treasure, which is in the right hand, can produce a lot of benefits and incomes to the companies. These gaps were exploited by many foreign companies in this situation. So some Ukrainian companies were bought by some other bigger companies in Europe or United States with their designs, ideas, and other people. So even not mentioning any property rights at all. Others company, Ukrainian company, they're still trying to find themselves in this environment more ready for that kind of discussion and cooperation with the foreign companies, not to sell themselves, but to have a joint venture, something like that. So we are now in the process. It's important also to open the export of these companies to the world market. Because in that case, they will learn a lot how to use the property rights, intellectual property rights in a correct way. European industry and other things, of course, they are very slow. They're very bureaucratic, and it's not easy to use even the potential in our case, because in our case, it's all about time. So we need everything fast. We need everything cheap, budget, and we need everything very simple, which can be used by our military immediately with a minimum training and easier to scale up. This approach has the challenges in Europe. They are slow, they're expensive, they don't like simple solutions. They prefer solutions which can bring some profit, maybe as fast as possible, or maybe in medium.
Big value added, right? That will bring.
Yes. Many of them
profit.
would like to hear some kind of plans for next 5 years or 10 years of delivery of something, to prepare it in a right way, strategic planning like that, which is not the case in Ukraine. We are not thinking about things which could be delivered in 1 or 2 even years. We're thinking about months. For Europe, it's impossible. So they are not ready. So that's why we're in the situation that there are resources in Europe. There are just even political will to support us. But the mechanism, how to do it fast, how to do it straightforward and effectively is still requires some kind of improvement. For us, maybe it's easier for Ukrainian companies to open the affiliates in Europe to start production, something like we do it with some private companies, Ukrainian, which is now a lot in Europe. And they can do it, in this case, 24/7, because people who are working there, they are not concerned about the personal life. They're concerned about the salaries and readiness to contribute to the victory in Ukraine. So it's a temporary solution for us, which is the way. Some other things technologically important to us, like production of drones in Europe, yes, it's important, but it's a slow process. And the design they deliver to us in 3 or 4 months requires some changes. And that's just a challenge for European Union. But both sides are learning from this, so listening to each other. So step by step, we're coming to some kind of intermediate solution, which is not maybe very effective for us, but nevertheless, it brings us more energy from European Union in any case.
Coming back to the battlefield, so the biggest technological revolution in this war is what you already mentioned, is unmanned systems. It's all kind of drones, robotics, and etc. What do you expect next? Do you have a feeling how the war will change technologically in the next in 26, in 27? What are the trends that you see?
Unmanned systems, drones, they become a phenomenon in this war. So now we have total understanding in Ukrainian military that we have an instrument which was not available before, and which is the best supplement, or even the not only supplement but the replacement for the old traditional systems like artillery or tanks or something else. But most important, it gives us opportunity to remove people in traditional role from the ground to save lives of people. For Ukraine, it's very important. Most of the tasks which were executed by humans during the previous wars now can be executed by robots. And day by day, we see more effectiveness in that. So next stage inevitably will be a mixture of humans, people, and these systems, but with less people involved, and people who are specially selected, trained, equipped, and deployed, but in very close coordination with the unmanned system. And this force can bring much bigger effect to the battlefield, and will provide the confidence in military that they can sustain any kind of enemy which is bigger in numbers. Because in technological way, it's not about numbers, it's about effectiveness. But after that, we are moving to the area which is still has a lot of questions, is the area of artificial intelligence things. It means that robots, unmanned systems, they become smart. And for people, it means that the role of people will be more about the planning of mission and programming all this stuff to execute it effectively and to monitor how it's going on. So sooner or later, we will see the wars, not the wars, but conflicts of robots from both sides. Not like Star Wars. Not like human-like robots. No, it will be small, different size, airborne or ground-based or maritime platforms which can identify and detect each other, similar objects on the big distances, and to execute the killing or something like that. It's not today, it's not even tomorrow, but we are moving to this direction. It means that in future, it will be one of the deterrent factor of big wars. Because in deterrent factor, either the relationship between small nations and the bigger ones, because small nations, they can demonstrate similar capabilities in some ways. Of course, the key problems, not the problems, the challenges with the weapon of mass destruction, like a nuclear weapon or something like that, is there. Ballistic missiles, they're still there. But these things will be used maybe for bigger conflicts, for achieving very strategic level ambitions. But for countries like Ukraine, for any European country, if they can use that experience, Ukrainian experience, with unmanned systems, and to do it in the right way, to select and train people, but most important, to develop, to raise the mental character of the civil society. Because in this technological war, civil society is a very important part. In previous wars, military were the number one. Now, civil society. Why? Because civil society provides the energy for innovation. During the conflict, you have to have instruments and mechanism how to follow the changes of technology on the ground. And you can't do it very fast with traditional government structures. You have to use energy of everybody in your country who is ready to contribute. That's why you have to teach, educate, and bring up your civil society in peacetime. be ready to react immediately and effectively to any kind of crisis. That's the challenge for Europe. If you don't have civil society, even if you have a lot of unmanned systems, even small teams of smart guys is maybe temporary solution, but in the long, middle term way, you will lose. Without this energy, without that mechanism of innovation, you will lose technological war.
One of the news of this year is that President Zelensky appointed a person, Mr. Fedorov, to the position of defense minister. And this was a very interesting solution and very unexpected because Fedorov is known as a minister of digital transformation. Is it a sign that there is a political will from Zelensky to digitalize Ukrainian defense and to make it more technologically advanced?
Yes, it's an understanding which was achieved through some period of time. It took almost 3 years for all key decision makers in Ukraine to understand it. Not because they are become smart, because of the change with the leadership. Most of the military on the middle level and high level were replaced during this war with the young generation. When we started innovations in 2022, 2023 with the mission, our military, we immediately experienced the problem. The traditional old-fashioned military, we were not ready for innovations. So it took some time during the career management rotation when the young officers from the ground with experience of this war and understanding of technologies, they were raised in ranks to the brigadiers or even generals, and they become the real pushers of this technological warfare idea to the top, up to the president office to the president. So now in 25 especially, and now 26, there is total consensus and understanding, not only in the military but in the government, that the only way for Ukraine to compete and to fight in this war is for technological things. It requires a leadership. You can't do it with the old guard, let it be so. You have to thank all people who were educated in previous times and to give them other tasks not related to innovations. And you have to open the door to the young generation. There are challenges, of course, because of that. Any kind of replacement of one generation with another in a fast way, of course, brings some kind of as minimum misunderstandings on the ground between the people. But appointment of Minister Fedorov as a defense minister, I hope it will contribute, especially in technological currents in the military. Of course, he will face a lot of challenges, as always, with the military, it's inevitably, because military, they don't like very fast changes, but he will insist that they have to do that. But once again, there are so many young military now who had never been in military before the war. They are from industry, from businesses, so they are very open for that kind of things. So it's only a matter of time. Then we will have right people in the right places in this technological revolution or transformation, not revolution, transformation.
One agent which is very important, one country which is very important to take into consideration in this situation of technological war is China. So when Ukrainians are talking about technologies, drones, when I visit some factories, who are producing drones, many people are saying, well, we took the spare parts from China. It's the Chinese spare parts. And we see that China makes a progress in robotics, etc. And we understand that in this war, China is more on the side of Russia than on the side of Ukraine. Do you think it can harm, in the long term, it can harm Ukraine and be a big disadvantage for Ukraine to have China rather as an adversary than an ally?
I don't think that China is an adversary. In our case, they're just trying to take the best from this conflict, even not paying a lot of attention to the future of Russia or Ukraine. So they're trying to have China benefiting from this situation. Of course, that's why they have an open market for components and unmanned systems, not only to Russia but also to Ukraine or some European countries. So everybody can come to Russia, to China, and to buy something. There are no restrictions, only for some specific maybe things. But Ukraine is not the only end user of Chinese products, and most of the Chinese products is also designs of some European and American companies, but with the production moved to China. So it's very globalized world. But of course, for us, it's important to have a strategic communication with China on political level, inevitably. That's the area we have to do more efforts. I know that from my personal experience when I was a Deputy Minister of Defense. I understood that it's important to keep communication on strategic level every day with China, even understanding their specific attitude. Concerning the dependency on the Chinese components or other things, we are not the only one in the world who started to pay attention to that. Europe is doing a lot now to build up their own European capacity for components, first of all, for chips, for controllers, or everything which can be produced in Europe, not to substitute, replace Chinese, but just to have their own strategic reserves in case of something. So it's a matter of security. So there are a lot of movements now in Europe in this regard. I'm not mentioning the United States. And we have to be in touch with Europe about that. I know that our companies are now paying more attention to the origin of the components. A lot of companies in Ukraine who are producing FPV drones, for example, they are less dependent on Chinese product now than a year ago. And I talked to some of them, and they are having in mind to improve in that situation and to be more reliant on Ukrainian origin components. So we have a lot of companies who are producing components similar to Chinese, but in Ukraine. Maybe not on the level and quality like China can provide. But we are moving to direction of domestic supply of many things in this war. For us, it's important because it's faster, it's cheaper, and it's more relevant to the needs of our defense industry. So, of course, there are some things which we can't do, like small magnetic type motors, which are used in specific things. It's also about lithium batteries, for example. It's about some kind of chips, specific chips. But most of the controllers, it's integrated circuits which are used in our systems. They are of Ukrainian origin, which we didn't do before the war. We didn't have that microelectronics developed in Ukraine before this invasion. Now, if you open the box or the body or the structure of any unmanned system which was produced in Ukraine, you will see a lot of stuff made in Ukraine. From materials to some kind of navigation things, for all EW things, which was not possible even 3 years ago. Now we are on the way because there is no choice. There is no choice.
That's very interesting and inspiring. Coming back to the global picture, if you don't believe, as myself, in a very good prospects of peace still this year, what do you expect to happen? Like, Russia will continue to attack, it will continue to bombard Ukrainian cities, it will try to destroy Ukrainian energy infrastructure. There is this technological war. Russians are still advancing, and in some places are very dangerous. So they are close to Zaporizhia, for example, already. They are there is a big battle for the four cities in the Donetsk Oblast, Kramatorsk, Slavyansk, and others. What do you expect in the next years?
We are moving now to the period of this conflict that Russia preferred not to be in. So they don't have military success, operational success on the ground because of the change of the nature of this war. The economy in Russia just on the brink of the all potential it had. This year, 26, will be important through two processes for Russia. Number one, it's losses of the people and every equipment in this war. And these losses will be only on the rise because, once again, of introduction of all these technological things. And because Russia, they're under political pressure to advance, it means they have to send people inevitably to advance. And in this technological environment, you are just destined, doomed for losses. And losses will be on the rise if they still continue to press with kind of gains on the ground. So losses, everyday losses, if we keep our attention on 1,000 killed and wounded every day, as we do it now, for Russia is not sustainable tempo. Why? Because the tempo of recruitment is lower. If you kill and wound around 30,000 per month, it's more than they can recruit. And also it's a huge blow to the morale inside Russia, families, society, and people. Second, for Russia, is what about economy? They started this war, as we know, in good shape. Then they accelerated economy through militarization, through a lot of credits for companies to join this production. And so there was even a rise in economy in 23 and even 24. But then all reserves of this kind of approach started to over. And especially with the background of oil and gas prices on all these global things, embargoes and other things. The first time we see, especially in 26, begin 26, we started to use the last reserves, national reserves, to keep the economy. And these reserves are limited. And if the pressure on Russian oil and gas industry continues, with all sanctions from European Union and United States, and with all the challenges with the payment back, the obligations inside the country, sooner or later, it's even sooner, they will face the challenge of resources to pay for this war, to pay the military, to pay the industry, and to keep the population in more or less stable thing. So they are in the middle of this now. Of course, for Putin, they prefer to avoid the situation of economical disaster in Russia. He preferred to reach some kind of military success as soon as possible. He is a hostage of this. So he's pushing all available resources to achieve the victory on the ground, which is not possible already. He doesn't want to accept these realities. And his military are just lying him to keep him more or less in comfortable mindset. So it's difficult to predict what is going to be in this environment. But my feeling that these permanent losses on the ground and the challenges with the economy and decline in the everyday lives of Russians in this year will contribute with the small cracks, with the small stresses inside Russian system, and which can bring them to a number of small black swan events which are not known to us yet, but we remember the story with Prigozhin coup, which was not predicted by anybody, but it happened because of something. And these small somethings, they are on the rise now, step by step, somewhere inside Russia. We can't see them in numbers because of the very close character of the Russian information space. So we can only feel through social media, some kind of small reports. Propaganda in Russia works hard just to demonstrate that everything is fine, that they're just winning. But these small cracks inside will create that kind of conflict of cognitive dissonance between the realities and people's just understanding what is going on in the media. So we have to do all Ukraine can do in this situation, just to kill invaders as much as possible every day, on the distances maximum which we can do with technological instruments. It's not about line of contact. It's about 50, 100 kilometers with drones, with everything for the Russians to feel them unsecured on our occupied territories. Of course, for us, a challenge is how to sustain these strikes from Russia on our energy system and other things. But once again, it's about the resilience. We did not enough in previous years to move from the old Soviet type inherited system or centralized system of energy, for example, to more net-based system. So we still were relied upon nuclear stations or like that, big generations. Now we have to do maximum to transform our energy sector from bigger producers to huge number of smaller ones, to deregulate this area, to attract innovations once again from civil society, how to move to more resilient type of the country. For us, it's a great window of opportunity. Because only in the crisis, during the real disaster, the human beings become thinking, adrenaline is on the rise, and you are sooner or later are with a good solutions how to survive that kind of challenge. Because if you have a lot of generations and you are not depends on something which is limited numbers, it means that it doesn't matter who is going to send you missiles. A number of missiles in Russia is very limited, so they can't match every generator or any something in the area with something. So sooner or later we have to demonstrate them, but we have solutions. So we are moving from centralized system to decentralized system of energy. It means we are not just reactive to any kind of losses of some kind of small things, and there is no way for Russia to threaten us with energy instruments. We have to do everything to convince them there is no way. Not because we are so brave, but we are smart how to do it in other way, like we do it on the battlefield.
My last question, what gives you hope?
The hope, our people. Every day I have some kind of communication with everybody from military to others. I just back from central Ukraine. I was in a small city in the central Ukraine, closer to line of contact. I talked to the local veteran community, with the local businesses, with the local people of all ages, and I see that readiness, internal readiness of people to keep fighting as long as possible with all these challenges. Everybody is adapting themselves and families to these realities. This small city, they also live with the blackouts, with air raids. But the energy I see in people gives me energy. That's why I'm totally confident that the key advantage of Ukraine in this crisis is a civil society, people. Without that, I think, of course, any nation could collapse through mathematical calculations. The bigger number of enemies is crucial in any kind of conflict. In our case, I don't know how it happened in our history, but on this period of Ukrainian history, we have very strong civil society, very matured, and with a lot of young generation is coming to this with understanding what it's all about. Before that, we still lived in the post-Soviet era, relaxed, thinking that everything will be resolved itself, somebody will take care of us. Now everybody understands that we are the masters of our life. Only we can decide what to do and how to survive. Only we can defeat the enemy with our energy, with our ideas, and of course, with support of our partners. Without partners, of course, any enthusiasm or something is also the problem. We have partners, we have key leaders in Europe with a political will. We have Americans. I'm not talking about the administration, I'm talking about American people who are supporting us. Both parties support for Ukraine. Everybody in the world, normal guys, they understand what it's all about. But they are all surprised how Ukraine is on the 4th year of this war, is fighting with a real belief that we will prevail. People, the best in the world.
Volodymyr Havrylov, thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you.
This was a podcast explaining Ukraine by UkraineWorld, an English language multimedia outlet about Ukraine. My name is Volodymyr Yermolenko. I am a Ukrainian philosopher, editor-in-chief of UkraineWorld and president of PEN Ukraine. My guest today was Volodymyr Havrylov, retired Major General of Ukraine's armed forces, former Deputy Defense Minister, and former Ukrainian Defense Attaché to the United States. Let me remind you that you can support our work on Patreon. Your contributions are essential as we depend heavily on crowdfunding. You can also support our volunteer missions to frontline areas in Ukraine, where we deliver direct aid to civilians and defenders. Donations are welcome via PayPal. All relevant links can be found in the episode description. Thank you for listening. Stay with us and stand with Ukraine.